Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about understanding our carry distances with our golf clubs, as well as shot selection surrounding those carry distances. So this shot I've got set up here, this is a practice par 3. I have about 170 yards of forced carry and 174 to the pin. I carry my 8-iron 175 yards. There's some other factors at play that we'll kind of zoom in and talk about here after I hit the shot. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to aim it about 15 feet right. I fade the ball, but I really like to not miss left here as that pin's kind of tucked left. Another thing you're going to see is I should swing that about 90 miles an hour. That's how hard I swing my 8-iron. And with that club head speed, the ball should carry my 175 yards pretty consistently. Like I mentioned, there's some other factors at play here. And if you look, that ball's kind of still running off the green, even though I cut it into the middle of the green. So let's go through and chat about that shot, and we'll start to kind of understand what clubs to select for what shots. So let's focus on what actually happened on that shot. So if you look here, straight at the flag over the water, I have 170 yards to carry it onto the green. Like I mentioned, I cut the ball, so I was trying to cut it into the middle of the green here, which I did, but there's this big slope in the middle of the green that pushes everything down to the hole. So as you can see, I actually ended up left of the pin. There's no real reason to take on this flag. So then you say, okay, well, if I'm aimed over here, about 15, 20, this is 23 feet to the right, now you look at the forced carry, and all of a sudden it's 163 yards. So 163 yards to carry, get you safely onto the green on that line, and even further right, you've got 159 yards. So even though the flag's 174, you'd be pretty safe picking, a 170 club if you were confident you could hit it over here to the right. Now, I wasn't quite as confident. I thought, well, maybe I'll pull it. So I grabbed my 8-iron, which, as I mentioned, I would swing around 90 miles an hour. 90.8 is pretty close. I'm always going to have a negative angle of attack because that's what we want with our irons. And I hit that one pretty solidly. A good smash factor for an 8-iron on tour is 131. That was 130, which means I compressed it solidly. Now, I know I said just a minute ago that I carry my 8-iron 175 yards, and I do. So why did it carry 180 yards? Well, we're 26 feet downhill, so that comes into play. And then the course I'm at, Bear Dance down south there, that is about 1,500 feet more altitude. So all of a sudden now instead of carrying it 173, 174, so 175, now I'm carrying it 180, 181, 182. So understanding carry distance versus total distance is a really important factor in selecting clubs. Now, the other factor we really want to lock in and focus on, you heard me mention carry distance. I find over the years, especially working with TrackMan for 16 years now, the thing you're going to find is most amateurs are generally aware, plus or minus 5 yards of their total distance. But I found players of all levels, scratch golfers on up, if they haven't used launch monitor technology a lot, they're not dead certain of their carry distance, and they're often better with shorter clubs than longer clubs because, as you can imagine, a pitching wedge is going to roll less than a 5-iron. So typically, as the club gets longer, players understand their carry distance a little less. So I get a lot of people who will come in and say, okay, well, I hit my 6-iron 170 yards, and it turns out they only carry it 153 yards, and it goes 170 yards. So if you think I can hit my 6-iron 170 yards, and you picture that as carry, and then you go to this hole, and we mentioned it was 170 to carry the longest part of the water. Well, even with those downhill and altitude and all those factors, and most people would probably pick that club because they say, okay, well, it's 174 to the hole, and I've got my 6-iron, and it's downhill 4 or 5 yards, it's at altitude 3-4 yards, perfect. I'm going to be 175 to 180. Well, the problem is that club really carries, like we mentioned, 152 or 3. So even adding 10 yards for the altitude and the downhill, we're still not covering that 170 to the front of the green. So if we look at where we'd actually hit that, look here, if I hit a good shot and it carries 163 or 164, now all of a sudden I'm pretty much right on the bank of the water. So if you can think back to your golf and how many times have you hit a solid shot that's come up just short, you're probably not quite aware of your carry distance. So that same player would probably pick now a 4 or 5 iron And the back edge of this green here is 196. So even if they club up and they carry that club, 165, 170, it's going to land on the green. It's going to roll pretty good. But they do have, between the flag and the back of the green, they do have 22 yards of green. So this all of a sudden has become not a scoring hole for them. It's too long a club to really get it close to the hole. Let's kind of aim for the middle of the green, try to hit it in the middle of the green, make a long putt, 2-putt, get on to the next hole. So hopefully that little brief explanation there helped you understand carry distance more and why it's super important to understand and really know and nail your carry distances. One of the reasons professionals are so good, if you look at their dispersion chart, if they were to hit, say 28 irons on a TrackMan, they'd hit a lot of shots, left and right, but there really wouldn't be a lot of shots long or short. They're going to pretty much have the same weight shift, have the same balance points. They're releasing the club the same way, the club's being delivered into the ball the same way. So they hit it generally on the club face. It goes generally the distance it needs to go. And that's really a key component to improving your golf game, is understanding your carry distances and managing your golf game and selecting shots based on that.